What?
I don't think yet.
Facebook just said, I recently posted something that violates Facebook policies, so we're temporarily blocked from using. I mean,
it could be us.
Right. Actual and factual. Sorry
about that, Howard.
I'm telling you, it was nothing too. Like, I don't even know what they're talking about. We got kicked off of YouTube for like posting some pro-vax stuff. Like, I don't know. Their rules are all messed up. Anyway, we'll just go forth.
Robots, man.
We're live on Twitter. I see y'all.
All right. Come on in, everybody. Welcome back to the Holler. I'm Justin with the Holler. tnholler.com is where you can find us, at the TN Holler on Twitter and Facebook, and also all of these other hollers hollering all across the state. Thanks to your support. We really do appreciate that. Also appreciate Lisa Parker for her support. If you're buying or selling a home in Middle Tennessee, do it through her. And if you need a lawyer, Abby Rubenfeld is very supportive of us. So look her up. Today, we're going to talk to our friends at the Highlander Center in, where are you? Newmarket, right? Newmarket, Tennessee, about what they're up to. Really appreciate them joining us here today. How you guys doing today?
Doing good. It's such an honor and privilege to be on with you all. We're so grateful for the space.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Well, so tell us a little bit. First of all, it's Ashley and Alan. Alan is Rev Alan. And tell us a little bit about, I mean, I've heard a lot about the Highlander Center. I know it has deep roots in Tennessee. I know that there were a lot of amazing people that trained there and learned there. Like, what's your elevator pitch for what the Highlander Center is?
Yeah. Highlander's been around since 1932. We're in our 90th year. We just turned 90 years old on November 1st. Of this year. We started out in Grundy County, which is in between Chattanooga and Nashville. And we've been a rural-based organization for most of our life as an organization. And we're a movement school. So we bring folks together from across difference and from across the rural South and urban South, where we help people learn together and plot and plan to build grassroots strategies together to change the economic, social, and cultural conditions that we've inherited. So we've mostly worked with folks like unemployed workers. We worked with folks who are engaged in the Black freedom struggle in the 50s and 60s. We've supported folks who are fighting for environmental justice issues in the mountains of Central Appalachia. And today we're doing the same thing that we've been doing since 1932. We're a major player in helping build out the movement for Black lives nationally and internationally. And we are doing work around economics, working around governance issues, helping basically grow lowercase d democracy across the U.S. South and Appalachia, and then also nationally and internationally. So we work with thousands of people per year. During the pandemic, we were closed in some ways, but we were still helping people out during the uprisings of 2020. And then we were working virtually to bring educational interventions to movement building throughout the whole country. So it's kind of hard to give an elevator pitch because our hands and our fingers and our minds and our bodies and our work are in a lot of different communities. But basically, in a nutshell, we're a school where people can come together to build social change together.
Yeah, if I was saying it in a nutshell, we've been bringing people together to figure shit out across difference since 1932.
That's right.
Well, and I think people should know some of the names are, Rosa Parks.
Yeah, she changed her. There's actually a really great new documentary called The Rebellious Life of Miss Rosa Parks that talks about Highlander folks and our relationship to Miss Parks.
Mm-hmm.
That's out on Peacock right now. And Dorothy Cotton, Martin Luther King, Septima Clark was on our staff. She's the world's greatest teacher that was teaching hundreds of thousands of people about literacy and voting before the internet and cell phones. Right. She's incredible. And that's true, but we're not a living museum. It's like incredible revolutionaries from the 21st century, people of goodwill, from closer to our age bracket also have come through those those doors. If you know movement leaders from the movement for Black Lives, I am one of the people that helped start that back in December of 2014. We've come through those doors too. If you know it, I know we got some Eastern Kentuckians that pay attention to what's going on with the Tennessee Holler. If you know Tanya Turner and Ada Smith and Ray Geringer, if you were in West Virginia and you know folks like Katie Lauer and others, Andrew Munn, the Steels, right? Like so many incredible people that are doing life-saving work from the top of the Appalachians down to the Black Belt South over to the South by Southwest corridor and in the global South. Many of those folks have a relationship with our institution that's decades long. And even more exciting than some of that, there are folks from the 27 million people that got in the streets, many of whom were from the South, because the South is the largest geographic region in the country, right? It's huge. The highest concentration of Black people, the highest concentration of LGBTQ plus people live here. Many of those folks that were mobilizing back in 2020 are folks that have been looking to be trained. How do we make change that's bigger than just shutting stuff down and protesting? How do we use that as one tactic in a multi-tactical toolbox? Are coming to Highlander to be developed in their leadership. And so not only do we have the privilege of sustaining the legacy of what it means to have trained folks like Rosa Parks, who went on to be on our board of directors and sustain the organization for decades, we also have the privilege and responsibility of doing that in a 21st century context. So I think, again, towards your request for an elevator pitch, what I would say is we're training the next generational cohort of the Southern Freedom Movement. And that has both regional, local, national, and international implications, because as goes the South, so goes the nation is a fact, not an opinion.
So we've seen a lot of progress in the country, but the states where you're based and around us seem to be coming along fairly slowly, relatively speaking. We still have a lot of poverty. There's obviously a lot of disenfranchisement that goes on that we see here in our state in Tennessee. What do you see around here specifically? And, what advice do you have to people who are trying to do this work in Tennessee? I mean, we're a Tennessee publication. So, what's the advice for us locally here?
Yeah, I think one of the things you can always lean on is that there is a deep and radical history in this state of Tennessee. Tennessee is the home base of some of the abolitionist struggles that brought about emancipation and that organized folks against forced enslavement back in the 19th century. Tennessee is a site of resistance against Anglo-colonialism back 400 years ago. All of the different ways that we talk about in 21st century context sits in a legacy of resistance against some of the things that y'all are covering, right? Like some right-wing, neo-fascist, neo-Confederate efforts to really make it difficult for people to survive and thrive. Those are forces that have been around for a long time. And there's also been forces of liberation and forces for progressive change that have been around for a long time. And so one of the things that we try to do at Highlander is remind people of that and connect people to the tradition of struggle that has its home in the mountains, that has its home in rural communities across the state of Tennessee, that has its home around rural communities and urban communities across the U.S. South, and help people remember that together. So that's just one thing, right? Is like one thing that I would say to people is don't let the narrative that you are backwards or that you are up against something that's always been around, don't let that dominate your consciousness. In fact, ask some questions about where you come from, or ask some questions about who's been engaged in struggle. Ask some questions about the legacies that you stand on and that you move inside, because there is radical and progressive struggle across the region, across the state, that we should be proud of and that we should claim in public and say, no, in fact, this is our tradition. It's not this wild, nonsensical neo-Confederate reality. That was part of the reality of this place, but this has been contested space in the public and private square for a really, really long time. And we can stand on the shoulders of people who have come before us to really build powerful struggle and movements right now that can change the material conditions of Tennessee and the rest of the South on the daily. And there are people who are doing that and doing an amazing work. And we happen to be one of those organizations that supports that work. So that's what I would say first.
Yeah, I mean, I want to start by saying I am a born and raised East Tennessean. I have lived outside of the state of Tennessee 6 months of my 37 years. And what I would offer in that is that I'm a Tennessee supremacist. As much as I believe the South is the tip of the spear of struggle for social change for the betterment of all people, I believe that Tennessee has been the cornerstone. And we've got actual factual evidence to prove that that's true. Alan talked about the abolitionist movement. The first abolitionist paper was written in Jonesboro, Tennessee.
That's right.
Highlander was born in Grundy County, lived in Knoxville, now is in Jefferson County and Newmarket. And, all these radical people found their political home, their safe haven, their sanctuary, their training facility to be very unique to what it means to be in the Appalachian East Tennessee mountains, right? It is not lost on me that people talk about the Garveyites, right? And the United Negro Improvement Association. One of the largest chapters was in Hamilton County, right? The Communist Party, for those of you that like that kind of ideology, had a headquarters in New York. They had a headquarters in San Francisco, and they had a headquarters in Chattanooga, Tennessee, right? Tennessee is where it's at. And as much as I can talk about the history, the long ago stories that white supremacy and capitalism and patriarchy and homophobia and all those systems of oppression have ripped away from our contemporary memory, what's real, to Alan's point, is that the work of people of goodwill is to remember those stories. Your inheritance is not just a right-wing, racist-driven blah, blah, blah. Your inheritance is this legacy of resistance. And we've been kicking fascism and white supremacy in the teeth for as long as we've been together in Tennessee. I also think what makes us unique, and any good Tennessean knows this, is that those 3 stars in our flag is because we're 3 states. It's a huge state. And there are people that are doing good work in the hoods and hollers from Hamilton County up to Bristol and over to Memphis, right? Everybody in all of those major cities, and frankly, the rural communities in East, Middle, and West Tennessee are doing incredible work. You've seen basically Mason, Tennessee, these incredible Black people in a place that most people didn't know about make national news because they are building a city, and they're doing it in the face of a white supremacist state infrastructure that is trying to steal away their right to self-determination. And so we have these examples of folks in a contemporary sense that are doing really amazing work for the betterment of all Tennesseans. And the last thing that I would say is that it can be very disconcerting, very discouraging, incredibly scary and depressing to think about the political realities of the state of Tennessee, particularly on the statewide level, right? When I talk about the legislature or the governor, even though a lot of our municipal governments are incredibly liberal, maybe not progressive, but are getting there, right? There are people from the left that are running for office on the local level. We're contending for school boards and city councils and county commissions. And that's amazing. But if we just look at it from the red map of the state, we have every right to be scared. Bill Lee is a Neanderthal. We've got some conservative folks, and I don't say this because I disagree that they have some sort of human dignity, right? I believe in working across difference to try to figure this stuff out. And I don't believe that some one ideology purist state is possible. But I do think that what we have seen from the right wing in the state of Tennessee is a fatalistic attempt to destroy everybody in hopes of consolidating their own wealth and power, particularly the wealth and power of white men. And so that's disconcerting, and rightfully so. But I think the question that Tennesseans ought to be asking themselves is why? Why are they attacking poor people? Why are they attacking women and gender oppressed people? Why are they attacking queer and trans people? Why are they attacking people of color, undocumented people, disabled people, etc.? And I would offer that I think they are doing it with the level of scope and scale and vitriol that they're doing because some of our movements might be winning, comrades. Some of us might actually be making it possible that the state of Tennessee be actually living into the so-called promise of the U.S. that everybody get liberty and justice, right? We've abolished slavery, finally. We've been, Memphis and Shelby County won living wage ordinances for their municipal employees. The state knocks it down, right? We actually might be, we've been recalling mayors. We've been passing local policies that are making it possible for folks to live full and healthy, sustainable and equitable communities, right? So we might not be losing because we're backward, because people don't vote, because blah, 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 all the things that the narrative tells us. We might be winning, and they might be figuring out how to consolidate their wealth and power through policy, through paramilitary force and political violence. And so I really hope that our folks, particularly rural folks, because I feel like we get blamed a lot for why the state is red, to really actually pay attention to how the right wing has done two things. One, they've gerrymandered our state so that our power is dispersed in ways that would make it impossible for us to win, even if everybody turned out and voted. And two, that we haven't had people that are particularly worthy of voting for in the first place, all too often. Some of these folks are running unopposed in our state. And thirdly, that, you know, can I be real honest?
Yeah.
If we're real honest, I think we would have a self-critique that, frankly, we have conceded territory in this state, which created a vacuum of leadership and community when people are looking for a sense of belonging, and conservative forces filled the vacuum we created.
That's right.
Right? We were too good to organize in rural communities. We were too woke to organize in faith communities. We were too woke to put aside some of our ideological differences to build the kind of statewide infrastructure that we had the capacity to sustain, because we were worried about ego, money, and credit, right? If we were being real honest. And I think because of those weaknesses, the right wing filled some of those gaps. And I think it's time to go get our people back.
So I guess I'm hearing you say, first of all, the gerrymandering thing is a very real point. This is a graphic about how redistricting shaped the midterms. You could see that. Are you guys there?
Yeah, I think we're back.
All right. Sorry about that. Anyway, the point I was making with that graphic was where independent groups and judges oversee districting, Democrats win. That's why Republicans work so hard to keep gerrymandering. And yes, both sides do it, but only one side wants to get rid of it. That's my point there. But the other point,
they vote in their interests.
Yeah, exactly.
They would do everything in their power to keep us from being able to.
Right. So I guess my question to you guys are uniquely positioned being in rural Tennessee. It seems like the divide between rural and urban is the real divide in this country, and it's intentional. Like, how do you bridge the gap between rural people and urban people? How do you have that conversation? And it sounds like what you were saying is, part of it is showing up, which I think that's true on some level. I ran for Congress. My district was pretty red. I showed up, but it's obviously not just showing up once. It has to be a sustained, movement to show up. But is it doable, do you think, to show up and convince people that we don't have that much different, that we have more in common?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I lived in Nashville for a few years, so a lot of the conversation around like what was possible in terms of connecting kind of a blue urban Nashville situation with rural communities throughout the rest of the state was often really oversimplified. It was like, well, they're actually really deep rural community organizing or leaders who are already doing the work of bringing people together to talk about the kinds of things that people want to talk about. So the question is not what do we need to go do, it's how do we need to support folks who are doing that work in the communities that we're otherizing, or we're creating some kind of abstract idea about because of some other story that we're telling ourselves about how we need to go help people out in rural communities. In the same way that we might go into the hood in the city and say like, wow, these people don't have any infrastructure, everything's going, but there's long traditions and there's different ways of organizing in city spaces that are often marginalized, whether it's Black or brown or immigrant or refugee,
right,
white working class. So the question is not so much like how do we, I think the question, part of the bridging is about recognizing that there is somebody on the other side, and it's about asking real questions about what do you need that you don't have that I can offer, and how do we do this together. I think the other thing is stuff takes time, right? And I think there's a temptation to observe change and fight for change as if we're going to do it overnight. Right. But it requires deep investments of time, resources, attention, conversations like this, relationship building like this, like we're having at this very moment, that are at the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 year long-term vision.
Right.
That is what has led to this quote unquote rural urban divide, is a willingness of the right to exploit the differences that might exist between rural and urban communities and the conditions between rural and urban communities, and have a systematic strategy to dismantle it, right? We're benefiting from a very nice medium like the internet, right? Like where we can have this conversation right now. And some of that's because is necessitated by the fact that the right wing took over and took control of the Federal Communications Commission, right? Like did different work in the 80s and 90s to really make it really difficult for folks who didn't have access to the technology that the internet would soon provide. The digital divide is really an interesting question to get into when you talk about spaces. And so what does it really mean to think infrastructurally as progressive people to move in concert with folks in rural communities who do want different kinds of information, do want different kinds of rights, do want different kinds of possibilities, do want different kinds of educational systems, health infrastructure, and say, we're going to do this on a 50-year fight. We're going to do this on a 100-year fight because that's really what it's going to take, right? It's really going to have those kinds of conversations. So I think it's long-term investments, and I think it's about like really paying attention to what people are already doing and saying, how do we flank and support you? That's one thing I'd say.
I think that's true. I also think, all too often we think in really false binaries and get into fake ass.
That's right.
A lot, like, although the conditions, time, place, and conditions of what's going on in rural versus urban communities can be really different. Typically the bad guys are the same. And typically the systems of oppression are the same. And I think all too often folks in Tennessee, regardless of if they live in a rural community or an urban community, if they're from the holler or the hood, they get told that they can't belong here, that they have to go somewhere else. Like white supremacy and capitalism and other kinds of systemic oppression don't exist in New York and California and Portland, Oregon.
Right.
Trash, right? It does, and sometimes is even worse with less infrastructure, right? Just to be real, it's like Trump ain't from Jefferson County. Trump is from freaking Queens. You know, I gotta watch my mouth.
And they hate him there.
You know what I'm saying? Like California gave y'all Reagan. So
and
like
Nixon.
And Nixon. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying we always been right, but we gave y'all Jimmy Carter. You know what I'm saying? So just to say, it's like, you know, again, I think part of it is a narrative thing that is I think the question that Highlander asks every time we get questions like this is like, who does this narrative serve? And is it actually Tennesseans? Because I don't know that it ever served Tennesseans to believe that like urban folks got it so good and rural folks got it so bad, or rural folks don't want anybody to mess with them, so we should leave them alone. And urban people are actually the ones that are liberal. Like who does that narrative serve? Because it's very rarely grassroots folks in urban and rural communities. And I say that having lived in both, right? Having been raised in both. The second thing that I would say is that, you know, again, I think this is a responsibility of the left. Like, I think some of us conceited rural folks, right? And we got to get right about that. We can't just say like the right wing did this. We also had some responsibility. I think we have to tell the whole truth. I think that what's super duper real to me is that the data about why, I'm just going to use this as one example, why white people in particular are joining white supremacist organizations, nationalist organizations, paramilitary forces, is because they're looking for a place to belong. Yep. They've said that explicitly. And what does it mean to be building across the urban-rural divide where everybody feels like they have meaningful work and a real welcoming experience to be involved and doing work for social good and economic good? And I think that we have to be building movements that allow for that to happen. And I think that that's in no small part a huge responsibility of Highlander to this state. I think we owe it to Tennesseans and to this region to be bringing people together across those differences and are committed to it. But I also think on the grassroots movement level, the base building level, we have to sort of dispel some of the mythologies that we've been told about why we're different and who created those differences and all of that sort of stuff. And I think that we have to lean into, I think all too often when urban and rural people get invited to be in conversation about movement building together in particular, It's like a competition. It's like, I got to make sure my thing gets on the platform. I got to make sure my thing gets into the campaign. I've got to make sure that we have a fundraising strategy that helps my organization and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that's not important, but Tennessee has 1 billion coalitions, about 1 billion issues, right? And many of them are amazing. Y'all might remember the Tennessee Not for Sale campaign. We were involved in that. We got statewide organizing for community empowerment. Shout out to Austin and the fam. Those are our friends. A sister organization. Tennessee Organizing for Power statewide is doing incredible work, and shout out to Free Hearts and the No Exceptions Coalition for the incredible work that y'all did to make sure that we abolished abolition in this abolish slavery in this state, right? So there's plenty of statewide coalitions, and that's not even naming all of them, right? Turk, the Tennessee Immigrant Refugee Rights Network, like there's so many folks that are doing incredible statewide work. The point to me in a 21st century context is not, do we need another place where urban and rural people work together? We got plenty of them. We might need more, but we have plenty of them. The question to me is a question that I asked when we started the movement for Black Lives is, what impossible things can only become possible if we do them together? And what is our responsibility in all of our little fiefdoms towards making that impossible reality possible? Right. And I think that there is a critical mass of people of goodwill. I think there are more of us in this state than people who don't have goodwill, who just need to decide that now's our time to do it.
Well, I love that message, and I believe it, and I do think it takes time. So people who are looking for an overnight fix or see an election as like a destination rather than a checkpoint, I think we got to start thinking more long-term. I'd be remiss if I had you guys on here without asking you about something that happened a couple of years ago, something that I think more than anything shows that you're on the right track. And that is the arson that took place. I just want to pull up a picture. This is a picture of fabled Highlander Center burned to the ground in 2019. This is, I think that's you in the aftermath. So can you tell us a little bit about, actually, I guess that night, what happened when you saw that this was going on? How'd you learn about it? And, what did it mean to you?
Yeah. It was March of 2019. This was before January 6th. This was before the suicide bomb in Nashville, which was Christmas of 2020.
Yep.
This was right around the time that Black churches all over the South were being set on fire and bombed by white supremacists. Y'all might remember the hashtag "Who's bombing Black churches," which was silly. We knew who was bombing Black churches, but was, a narrative strategy.
Still doing it, by the way.
Exactly. It was when mosques and synagogues all over the country were being attacked by Nazis and white supremacists of all, Christian nationalists of all stripes. And internationally, it was when the Holy Lands in Palestine, like the mosque in Jerusalem, were also being attacked. So this was not just a domestic issue either, right? Which taught us a lot, that white supremacists are building relationships across borders, which I would argue our progressive communities need to be doing too. So a lot was happening in March of 2019. I had spent most of the night the day before in that office. I'd left and driven back to Hamilton County and went to sleep. And 5 o'clock in the morning of the arson, I woke up boom, just wide awake. Couldn't figure out why. Looked at my personal phone, looked at my work phone to see if there was anything. Didn't see anything. Checked social media to see if there was anything. Didn't see anything. So I laid back down and went to sleep. That was 5 a.m. An hour later, at 6 a.m., I got a call from our CFO at the time saying that our office was fully engulfed in flames. So I got in my car. I drove back to Highlander. I called Alan, who was in Nashville at the time, doing some work at Vanderbilt, and was like, "Yo, man, our office is on fire. You got to come on." Sorry, you're not going to be doing your speaking engagement today. Come back to New Market.
That's real.
And so by the time I got there, I could see into the foundation. The building was gone. It burned hot and it burned fast, and was pretty obviously an arson, even if the white supremacists who burned our office down hadn't spray painted their calling card in the parking lot. So, but I hadn't seen it yet. When I first got there, I just saw the building. Obviously, the first priority was, is everybody good? Anybody hurt? both including our staff, the program participants. We were doing the Appalachian People's Movement Assembly at Highlander that weekend. So we had not only people already there, we had people that were coming that very day for the first day of the assembly. Our staff decided they didn't want to cancel. And so we continued to do that excellent work. We checked in with the law enforcement officers and the firefighters that were there just to make sure they were okay and didn't have smoke inhalation and the like. And then I was escorted to the spot in our parking lot where the white power movement symbol was spray painted, and it was obvious this was intentional. And I think, the days after that, the months after that, and now the years after that, what has become clear to me is that I think white supremacists, whether the feds and the folks that investigate this ever actually tell us who did it, right? We're still, the investigations are still open. I wish I had more to update you, but we're waiting to hear what they're finding out, and that's been true since about 2019, right? So I think that what we know, though, for sure, whether it is ever actually proven or not, is that what these white supremacists were trying to do was break our spirits. They wanted to scare us so bad and depress us so badly and distract us so badly that we didn't continue to do the work of bringing people together across difference to make all of our material conditions better. And they failed. They failed miserably. And I think they wanted to be able to use this attack on the Highlander Center, which is an attack on all of our social movements, not just in the U.S. South, but across this country and across the globe. All of our movement partners would have been impacted had we stopped movement work. I think they thought that was going to work, and they were going to be able to use that to recruit even more people to their hateful ideologies. And I think they failed at that too. And I think we've been able to build more infrastructure, both inside of movement and pushing philanthropy, to really consider the cost of what the material cost, the resource cost of what it means to do this sort of life-saving work, but also how to keep people safe long enough to be able to enjoy the victory, right? So that we can actually live to see it and thrive in the new world that I think we all that love Tennessee Holler are trying to build together. So it was shitty, yo. It was mad hard. It was traumatizing. My whole life is different. His whole life is different. Our staff's lives are different. Our program participants' lives are different now that we've been attacked by white supremacists in a 21st century context. What's real for Highlander is it wasn't the first attack. There was a lot of attacks that led to us being a new market.
Yeah.
It's just the most recent one. And what I can tell you, the good news, the gospel, as some people say, is that we've weathered those storms. And I think we are stronger for it. I never want to do it again. But what's real is people all across this great state, all across the South, all across the region, all across the country, and as far away as like Japan, were sending us messages of love and solidarity and did everything in their power to make us know that they were at our backs. They got our fronts, and we feel that love and that community is what has kept us safe since 2019. So how are we doing since the arson? Busy. And I think y'all might actually be the first press to hear this, is that we're planning on breaking ground on our new office in January.
That's the goal.
Love it. Yeah. In the same place?
Same place. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to be real, like that headline that you showed up, just to be really, really thoughtful about that headline is very misleading. The Highlander Center was not burned down. It was our administrative office.
Yeah.
Highlander's multiple buildings. It's 186 acres.
For now.
And it was the office that was destroyed. So that was tragic. It's awful. It sucks to still have to wade through the impact of that. And there was some pretty big misperceptions of media at the time that said Highlander Center was destroyed,
or that we lost our archives, which wasn't true.
Yeah, our archives are many of them are safe in offsite locations and very well protected and very well preserved by trusted archivists and other librarians throughout the country, many in the South, and then some are on site. And yeah, there was some stuff that was destroyed, and the totality that some of the headlines make people believe is not true. So we take the opportunity just to encourage people to know that, a lot of it, most of it is still quite all right.
That's right. And I'll say this and then I'll shut up. I think also the thing that was most important to me is even if they had burned it all down, even if they had, not one person was physically injured beyond repair.
Mm-hmm.
right? And every attack on Highlander that's meant to shut us down has failed.
That's right.
And even if they had burned every building on that property down, Highlander would have continued because, you know, what did Miles say? You can padlock a building, but you can't padlock an idea. Highlander is in the hearts of the people.
Yeah.
And we are committed to continuing to do that wherever we are.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's the beauty, like the secret of the sauce of how we've made it to be a 90-year-old Southern movement organization is that it don't matter what, that's the thing. It don't matter what they do. It don't matter what they do. Highlander is going to figure out a way to continue to be a company and supporting social movements in our region until the wheels fall off, until we win and we don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate what you guys do. Just as a final thing here, can you tell people how they can get involved, what you guys, where they can come to visit and how they can help?
Yeah, there are multiple ways. I mean, back in the day, you used to be able to just ride up to Highlander and come and hang out. Since the arson, you can't do that anymore.
Right.
You got to give us a heads up.
Give us a heads
up. Visitors anymore. Sorry, guys. I wish we lived in a world, and we will return to a world where unexpected visitors are more than welcome, but we're not there yet.
Right.
So give us a heads up. If you want to come and tour, all you have to do is email us. Our email address is on our website, highlandercenter.org. You can hit us up on socials. We respond to people when they message us on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. Shout out to our comms team. So if you don't do emails and you just do social media and you're trying to find us, you can find us there. We also have personal accounts that I know Tennessee Holler is sharing. So you know, I believe in talking to people. I'm an organizer. So if you hit me up and I've got time and capacity, I'm probably going to speak to you because I think that's right. We're humans. All of us. So you can hit us there, and we still do training programs. Some of that is in person. Some of that is virtual, and all of it gets put in our e-newsletter, which is called The View from the Hill, because obviously we're in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains on an incredible hill. So you can come and hang out with us either virtually or in person. Through the programs that you can find out about either on our social media, on our website, or in that newsletter. But just know, like, we are our whole mission is in service of directly impacted communities in the state of Tennessee and across the region. And if we would do it for everybody else, we'd absolutely do it for Tennesseans. You heard I'm a Tennessee supremacist. So what y'all want? I got it for you. So yeah, we want folks to be engaged with us both as movement leaders and as an institution, and we are arguably one of the most accessible movement organizations in the region and the country. So come get down with us and tell us what you need, because if we're not doing something that movement needs, we're open to figuring out if we can do it, and if we can't do it, pointing you in the direction of a sister organization that can.
Yeah, so just real specifically, go to the website, highlandercenter.org, scroll all the way down, fill out your information in the box that gives you the opportunity to sign up for the View from the Hill newsletter. And after you do that, consider going back up to the top of the website and press the donate button and throw down with Highlander or one of our fiscally sponsored organizations, who are amazing organizations that we administratively support, strategically support. And there's all kinds of ways to get in wherever you fit in, even if programming isn't something that you can commit to at the time. So we'd love to have you as a friend and supporter as well. Awesome.
Well, Ashley and Alan, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate you letting us know what's going on over there. Stay in touch for sure. And definitely want to hear more in the coming days. Maybe we can reconnect soon.
Awesome.
Appreciate y'all. We love Tennessee Holler.
Absolutely. Thank you.